Right, I am back with an Avowed video. Probably the only one I'll be doing until the actual game comes out, but fortunately I got early access from Microsoft and Obsidian, which was cool. And I got to play a pretty short demo trial version of it that is essentially the beginning of the game, stuff they haven't shown off yet. I promised this was going to be a time where I should put actual footage in here, but the file got messed up, so I can't. So sorry if you don't want to see my face, just listen to the audio. I liked it. I liked it quite a bit, actually. And looking over some of the other people who played it, it seems to be a generally very positive reaction. I am coming from the perspective that I did not think this game looked terribly good or sounded terribly good from kind of the start. We knew it was Obsidian, and by the time Microsoft ended up buying Bethesda, it was like, why can't they just be making, a new Fallout game or something like that, or like an in-between Elder Scrolls game? It sort of is an in-between Elder Scrolls game. But I think, we all recognize that Obsidian is very talented, and they are doing something pretty unique and impressive here with their more limited resources than bigger studios. This will obviously be compared to Elder Scrolls because it is much more like that than it is kind of any other fantasy game that we played recently. Baldur's, Dragon Dogma, Dragon Age. Like, it's not like those. It's like Elder Scrolls, essentially, in terms of how it's set up. It is obviously going to be a much smaller scale version of Elder Scrolls, but it's very fun. I really enjoyed it. From the previews, I did not really like the way it looked, and combat looked kind of stiff and stilted. And then I got my hands on it. I don't know if I was just wrong about combat or if it just feels that much better to play it, but this was probably the aspect I was most impressed with. The diversity in combat is really fun because you can mix and match anything, essentially, on each of your hands or your loadouts, whatever you can imagine. It's not just like sword and shield, great hammer, dual wield, bow, hands for spells. Like, there's a lot of things. Am I gonna regret doing that pose? I feel like I am. You can like have a spell book and a sword. You can have a wand and a mace. You can have all these different things. There's pistols. I never found a pistol, but I guess there's pistols. I think there's shotguns. It's a really wide range where it's not just like, oh, you can be a warrior spellcaster. It's like you can be a ton of different things. And kind of do some really unique builds that I think you can't really do across other games. Again, this is early. I only got a couple of skill points to put into stuff, but you can already see kind of the diversity in gameplay, especially like it doesn't seem like you're super locked into necessarily one style of play. And I just kept swapping through weapons and weapons just to try everything out. Melee feels good. I don't really like first-person melee for the most part. The exception there would be Cyberpunk, where first-person melee is actually kind of awesome. Here, it feels like substantive, like you really kind of feel, like even on PC without controller feedback, you feel the weight of these weapons, and like slamming something with a great hammer will send them flying in a way that is very funny and also feels really good. One of my favorite weapons was the wand, where you're just like shooting off rapid fire missile spells, where it feels like high combat Harry Potter, which is pretty fun. And that's separate from something like the spell book, which casts actual spells, so it's diversity there too. And I only fought, a pretty limited number of enemies, just a couple bosses, and then I wandered into zones I wasn't supposed to be in yet and got destroyed by things. But I always had a good time with combat. The story, not really too much to say yet. You're a chosen one type of person who needs to go to this island that has been infected by some sort of weird fungus that is transforming the landscape, infecting animals, and if it infects humans, you kind of go crazy and murder everyone. There's like, it opens with a bunch of soldiers that murdered each other because of this. Yes, The Last of Us has fungus zombies, but, they don't have a monopoly on fungus, so this seems like a really kind of cool way to go about that. And, the rainbow color palette here, which I thought looked a little odd, is actually pretty cool in practice. I really like the vibe and the aesthetic of it in a way that kind of elevates it beyond your typical grim and gritty gray and brown medieval fantasy type of thing. I think Dragon Age kind of had this too, but we won't go back into that. So we'll see what happens with the story, but like where things start to get very Obsidian-y is in the quests you get, where your main quest has like a decision or two, but you can start taking on these side quests. And, just minor spoilers here for tiny side quests where this woman wants a bunch of these, I don't know what they are. They're like lizard things cleared out of her house. They like took over her house, and you go there and you see that there's like a painting on the wall of her like dancing with a lizard, and you're like, well, that's weird. And you go back and she talks about how she had these dreams about these lizards, and like how she's like searching for, some missing part of her soul, and she had a dream that it was one of these lizards. And you're like, what? You're like, okay, what do you want me to do about that? And you tell her to like either like run away or like go try and hang out with the lizards. And like, I don't know, maybe that comes up later if you go back to her house. There, I just randomly stumbled across a graveyard. I'm like, oh, I'll fight some skeletons. No skeletons. There were grave robbers there. They do not immediately attack you. You can talk to the leader and be like, yo, grave robbing is awesome. Like, have fun. Or you can be like, I'm going to murder you because grave robbing's bad. I opted to murder them, except one of the guys was scared of me and ran away, and I didn't kill him. Maybe he shows up later. But the point is like nothing is really just super straightforward. Like, go get this item and bring it back. Maybe there's some of those, but at least in the intro here, this does seem more like your typical type of quest. There's also a lot of there's skill checks in terms of dialogue, like everywhere. Pretty much every conversation you has his skill checks for dialogue to some extent. How much those play into what happens is unclear. It kind of felt like the responses didn't always match up with the thing I was saying, like in terms of whether that skill check did anything. So I was a little confused there, but and I know that's a system people like and people have wanted to see more of. This feels like it's moving back toward a lot of things that Bethesda has left behind, like all your complaints about Starfield, where combat doesn't feel as good, or conversations don't feel as good, or the writing's not as good. This feels like it's sort of an answer to those kind of things, even if it wasn't really trying to be, because obviously they've been working on this well before Starfield, and I think they wanted to retain a lot of the stuff that people liked about New Vegas. The final thing I'll touch on is exploration. Again, I had a pretty limited zone here. The way this ended the main storyline is one of the funniest things I've ever had in a test like this. I'm not going to spoil it. I don't even know if it's a part of the real game or if it's just something funny they did to like make us stop playing. But even after you did that, you could load back in and explore, which there's a lot to explore. I wish I had more time. I had some other stuff going on, so I could only play maybe like 2 hours or so. Just really cool things you can find. I found, I was climbing up some random stairs, found a temple full of ghosts that were very hard, killed the temple full of ghosts, climbed all the way up to the thing, solved a little environment puzzle to get into a room. I found some unique boots, some lore about the boots lying around, and then you can keep climbing. And I'm like, oh, there's more to climb. And you climb all the way up this cliff, and there's some sort of like talisman that you're supposed to collect and like give to the gods if you find enough of them. I have no idea what that's about, but it seems like a valuable item. And again, this was just something I randomly found. I don't know if that was like supposed to be a quest you get from someone later, but this does sort of feel like, true exploration in a way where you just sort of find random crap, and it feels fun to kind of discover things that you were just sort of distracting yourself with, as opposed to everything being go here, do this quest. Again, I don't know how big this map is going to be. I don't know how long this game is going to be. It is very much going to be smaller scale than a lot of other games in the genre, but it feels really fun. I don't really have much to criticize. Like, yeah, it looks a little lower budget for graphics, and I don't know how performance is going to be necessarily. The character models are a little stiff when they're, having conversations with you, but like, I don't need every game to be like perfectly photorealistic motion captured. And I wouldn't say the conversation thing is any worse than Starfield, honestly. And if the writing is good, which also seems to be the case so far, like, who cares? So really, really positive. Honestly, I have to admit that I did not really see this coming based on my initial impressions of the footage. I should have kind of trusted Obsidian, I guess, because Obsidian is very good. But I am really looking forward to this now. I think it's going to be a really solid entry in 2025, and it feels like something that's going to be a hit. So whatever a hit means on Xbox Game Pass. Anyway, thanks for watching. Maybe I'll get another test and be able to do some footage. But yeah, I will talk to you guys soon. Take care.